We're in a series called The Fight, and last week we took a look at the fight for marriage, okay? We took a look at the 6 purposes of marriage, and we did a little interview. Jason Gans interviewed my wife and I, and what I understand from feedback from Facebook and just you all personally coming up here, I'm retiring today. My wife's taking over. She did a great job. But today we're going to be taking a look at the family, the fight for the family. And I choose the word fight because families aren't strong by accident. By accident, honestly, they're average. And my heart for our spiritual family, for those families that are here, is I don't want you to be average. I want you to stand above the crowd. I want you to be a mountain in a desert, okay? And I choose the word fight because there are forces working. Economic forces, spiritual forces, cultural forces, okay? Social forces that want to destroy your family and our families. Today, what I want to do is I just want to take a look at the positive side at how to fight for your family. In the Old Testament, there is this guy named Nehemiah. And in his day, he said this to his families: don't be afraid of the enemy. Remember the Lord who is great and glorious, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, your homes. He says your family is worth fighting for. People have this mentality that once their kids get to a certain age, it's kind of like, okay, it's over with, nothing I can do. Nehemiah is saying, don't go down that road. Regardless of where you are at on the road of family, you may be a single, guess what? You're still a part of a family somewhere. Or whether you are a young family, have young ones, or your kids have already grown, okay? There are 4 common traits that are represented in a strong family, and I've put them as symbols here today. And the first symbol of a strong family, take some notes because we're going to interview my kids today. You're going to find out what Cheryl and I are really like, okay? But the first symbol of a strong family is this: it's a board game. It's Candyland. How many of us are familiar with Candyland? May I see your hands? Yes, I want you to know it doesn't take intelligence to play this game. It's for 3 and up. It's a game of chance. And why I chose a board game, Candyland, is this. Well, you write this down. Strong families are playful. You see, this is the first common denominator of strong families, that they know how to play. They enjoy one another. Today, this is a missing element in so many families. Today, families are tired and worn out. They're stressed out. They're negative. I mean, who wants to come home to something like that? Today, the average family is all work and no play. The fact is this, though: your family isn't a boot camp, and you're not the drill sergeant. Your family isn't a business, and you aren't the CEO. Your family isn't a research center, and you aren't a scientist. There's no science for raising perfect kids in a perfect family. Folks, it's an art. And part of the paint that you put on the canvas is play. Now, we're real familiar, I know, about the Bible teaching the importance of work, and work is important. But most people don't realize that God gives equal emphasis on play. Take a look at what Solomon says out of Ecclesiastes 8:15. Solomon says this: I commend the enjoyment of life. Will you circle the word enjoyment? You see, play is extremely important to development. For kids, play is work. For kids, recess is an important time. I have 2 grandkids that just started kindergarten. And so I called them up on their first day of school and says, hey, what did you like about kindergarten? They said, oh, we have 2 recesses. Recess to them is like opening a book. Well, you write down this verse. It's 1 Timothy 6:17. I wasn't able to get it into the outline for you. It says this: God generously gives us everything for our enjoyment. Do you realize that everything in this world that God created was for your enjoyment? Which means that God wants life to be enjoyable for you, not enduring. God meant for you to enjoy life, to play, to have fun. Solomon says this in Ecclesiastes 11:8. People ought to enjoy every day of their lives, no matter how long they live. Now, why is this so important? It's because you don't know how long you're going to live, do you? So whatever living you're going to do, you better do it now. And especially if you have kids, because before long, they are out of the house. When my kids were growing up, I determined that the number one thing that I wanted them to know about our family was not that we are spiritual, was not that we are smart, but rather that we were loved and that we had fun. Now, I don't care whether you're single or whether you're married with young kids or your kids are moved out, you're an empty nester. You need to write this down. Will you write this down? People don't remember what you say, but they will remember how you made them feel. My kids don't remember anything that I taught them in the early years. In fact, they could care less about the sermons that I wrote, okay? But they do remember how Dad made them feel. Now, Solomon hones in on this kind of playfulness and enjoyment in this verse, Ecclesiastes 9:9, where he says, enjoy life with your wife, whom you love. You see, if you're a dad, enjoy. The greatest gift that you can give to your kids is for you to enjoy their mom, for you to have fun with their mom. It creates stability and security, and it produces peace in their heart. When I hear couples say, you know what, we really don't have the time because we have kids to go out, I think that is a serious mistake. Because you are the first and the greatest model of relationships. If your kids, if all they see are two ships passing in the night, if all your kids see of you as a mom and a dad is work all the time, guess what? They're going to grow up thinking that that's what marriage is all about. It is not. Enjoy your mate. In fact, not only enjoy your mate, but enjoy your kids. David in Psalms 127 verse 3 said this, children are a gift from God. Will you circle gift? Now let's be honest here. There are some gifts we would like to exchange, right? There are times that all three of my kids, my boys, okay, you want them, you've got them, okay, no problem here, okay? But what is a gift? It's something to be enjoyed, isn't it? Are you enjoying your kids, or are they just a pet project of yours? Solomon expands on this. In Ecclesiastes 8, we've looked at it. Let's look at the last half. In 8:15, where he says, I recommend having fun. That way you will experience some happiness along with all the hard work God gives you. When kids were asked what the number one thing that they would like to do with their families, their answer was absolutely shocking. The number one thing, the most often referred to by kids of what they wanted to do with their family was this: play board games and not video games. Isn't that shocking? Why? Because video games are kind of one-on-one. It's kind of a personal thing. Whereas board games, you have to interact with adults. So will you write this down? Play creates bonds. Play creates bonds and a pathway for critical conversations. And I'll speak to the latter one later. But play creates bonds. I talk with successful guys all the time who tell me, you know what, I give my wife and my kids all the trappings of Collin County, and it is never enough. I just can't figure it out, Pastor George. And I just tell them, they want you. They want your time, because love equals time. When you give them your time, you are giving them your life. And when you give your life, you can't, and your time, you can't get that back. And so what they need is a foundation first. I don't care whether they're young or 40 years old. Mine's almost 40, and I still play with my kids. They need fun with the family, in the family. And by the way, that's the way church ought to be with our kids, right? It ought to be fun. The second symbol of strong families is this, a watering can, okay? Watering cans water flowers and plants and vegetables. The main, in life, water is required to grow a garden. And our families are like gardens. They need to be grown. They need to be cultivated. They need to be developed. Like a garden, you got to weed it. You got to water it. You got to care for it. And so the second characteristic of strong families, not average families, but strong families, is this. Will you write this down? A strong family encourages growth. And it encourages growth from everybody, not just the kids. Everybody grows. Mom grows, dad grows, brother grows, sister grows. Now, this may shock you, but I'm going to say it anyway. If your family isn't growing, your family is boring. If your family isn't growing, your family is boring because you're stuck in a rut. And if your family isn't taking on new initiatives and new interests, your family is boring. Now, this was not true of Jesus. In Luke 2, verse 52, it says this of him. He was 12 years old. Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and with man. Notice that there are 4 kinds of growth, okay, that you want in your family, for everybody, not just for the kids, but for mom, dad, brothers, and sisters, okay? You want wisdom, that's intellectual growth. You want stature, that is physical health. You want favor with God, that's spiritual growth. You want favor with man, that is social or relational growth. Everyone in the family needs to be growing in those 4 areas. So let me ask you this question. As we start, that's why we've got a ministry fair. As we start this new calendar year in the sense of based on our kids and life, in our lifestyles, how are you going to be different 1 year from now? Honestly. People ask me, George, what do you do on your sabbatical with your wife? Most of our time, we enjoy each other. Cheryl and I go on walks, all kinds of things. But you know what? We spend a good portion of our time thinking through goals. These 4 areas plus a few others. Where are we at and where are we going? Introducing new things into our life. Now hear me out. There are some things that you can only learn in the family. If you don't learn them in the family, you know what's going to happen? You're going to have a rough life the rest of your life. I can tell you this, most adult problems come from the fact that when they were kids, they didn't learn things correctly or they didn't learn the right skills. And if you don't learn them when you are a kid in a family, you're going to have a rough life the rest of your life. So let me give you 5 things that everyone should be learning in the family. The first one is this, what you do with your feelings. Families that are truly fighting for everyone learn how to recognize feelings. They learn how to name feelings. They learn how to own their own feelings. They learn how to express their feelings. Secondly, the second skill that you learn in a family is how to handle conflict. You see, kids don't know intuitively how to do that. And if kids don't see mom and dad learning how to work out the differences, I'm going to guarantee you this, they're going to have a rough time when they get older in life. The third thing that you learn in a family is how to handle losses, because everyone's going to lose something in life. In fact, a kid who has no losses early on, I think is detrimental to their growth. They aren't going to learn the quality of resilience. And so everyone loses big things and little things. And so a family needs to learn how to grieve. I will never forget a time when Matthew wanted a lizard and we got it for him for Christmas. Got the big thing like this. I went off on a conference in February and 2 months later, it is sick. We are spending more money at the vet than what we paid for this lizard. And it passed away. Guess what? As a family, we didn't poo-poo that. Hey, don't worry about it. We'll just go out and buy you another one. No. We gathered together and we wept together. We cried and we had a funeral for this lizard. It is buried in the backyard of our Plano house, okay? Families have to learn to grieve together. The fourth thing that you learn in a family is what values matter most. You have to help your kids know what's important and what isn't important. Would you agree that the world's values aren't good? I think we all would. The world says, hey, what matters is how you look. You better be wearing the right kind of things, okay? You better have the right symbol on your shirt. You better possess the right kind of phone. You better be involved in the right kind of clique group. You better have sex. Folks, our kids are learning all these things from our culture, from movies, from video games, from songs. Honestly, we need to be teaching our kids that the devil is alive on planet Earth, that he's operating through three basic temptations: sex, salary, and status, that he's operating through pleasure and possessions and position. When my kids were young, we would watch TV together with them, and when the world would put forth a value that wasn't biblical, we would point it out, and then we would teach them the right value. We need to be fighting for our kids. The fifth thing that you learn in a family is this: good habits. And habits determine character. Will you write this down? Manners make the man. And when I say man, I'm speaking universal in person. Manners make the man. When a little kid learns manners, I'll guarantee you this: he's going to know more than most adults in our culture. So how do you do this? Let me give you 2 ways to do it and 2 ways not to do it. First of all, you do it through example. Jesus did this. In John 13 says this. Jesus said, "Since I have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you." Folks, we learn more through the eyes than we do through the ears. The second way to do it is through conversation. And remember what I said: play is the basis. It creates the bond, and it creates the pathway for critical conversations. Now, unfortunately, families in our culture don't have critical conversations. Most of the conversations are around logistics. We got to go here, we got to go there, make sure you have this, make sure you have that. Did you get this? You forgot that? Okay, we're going to go back home and get this. Hey, when you get there, make sure you do this. It's all, and most of it is built around logistics and not critical stuff. Notice God's mentality as he's forming a nation, this young family called Israel, in Deuteronomy 6, verse 7. You must teach God's commandments to your children and talk about them when you're at home or out for a walk, at bedtime, and the first thing in the morning. Will you circle the phrase, talk with them? Critical conversations at least 4 times a day. Will you circle home, walk, bedtime, and morning? He's saying that there are critical moments that you and I need to capture. And I believe play is a great one of those moments. Walking outside, just having fun. You see, this is what God tells us to do if we're going to fight for strong families. And yet, culture would say this: hey, I'm just going to let my kids decide for themselves what's important, what isn't. You are kidding me. What 10-year-old knows what is right and what is really wrong? We got to be passing our values of what's important and what isn't important. 2 ways not to do that is through criticizing, nagging, complaining, condemning. Why? Because when you criticize, you're focusing on what you don't want rather than what you do want. And not only that, when you criticize, you are labeling. It is reinforcing the negative, and it doesn't work. Well, Pastor George, I just want to make them tough. You're not going to make them tough. You're going to make them into failures, okay? And by the way, it doesn't work for preaching either, okay? Being negative to a spiritual family doesn't work either. That's why I am personal, practical, and I am positive. I choose to be positive because most people don't understand that repentance doesn't mean stop the bad. It means start doing good. Go in this direction. This is the right direction. That's why I'm personal and I'm practical And I'm positive negativity doesn't work. Take a look at Ephesians 6:4 with families. Don't keep on scolding and nagging your children, making them angry and resentful. Instead, bring them up with the loving training and teaching of the Lord. Another one not to do is comparing. Why? Because everybody is unique. Take a look at Galatians 6:4. Each person should judge his own actions and not compare himself with others. Then he can be proud of what he himself has done. James is bringing to our attention that there is a bad kind of pride and there's a good kind of pride. Bad pride is when you compare yourself to other people. You know what? I'm better than you because of what I wear. The phone that I possess, okay? The clique that I hang with. But there's a good pride, and the good pride is when you compare yourself to yourself and you say to yourself, you know what? I've done the best that I can do. You see, I know you've heard this before, but honestly, I love our spiritual family. I do. I love LifePoint. But let me add to it, I'm also proud of LifePoint. We are a unique expression of Christ in this community, and we are doing the best that we can do. And so you don't compare yourself to others. The third aspect of a strong family is this. Will you write this down? Strong families protect each other. And this symbol is a raincoat. We got a red one and a yellow one up here. We know this, don't we? That in life, there are good days and there are bad days. There are days when the sun is shining and there are days when it's raining. And when it's raining, it rains on the good and the bad. It rains on the righteous and the unrighteous. Why? Because we live in a broken world, don't we? And when you're going through some kind of storm, whether it's emotional, mental, physical, relational, whatever storm, you need a family around you to protect you. Families are meant to protect one another, not devour one another. Take a look at Ecclesiastes 4, verse 9. Two are better than one. If one of them falls down, the other can help him up. But if someone is alone and falls, it's just too bad. Because there is no one to help them. Now let me share with you 3 storms that I think every family should be prepared for, okay? The first one was simply this: change. Change happens all the time, okay? You're driving down the road of life, in a car even, and what happens? Boom, you hit a bump, okay? There's a pothole, and what does it do to the car? It throws it out of alignment. And what do you have to do? You got to take it to a professional and readjust the wheel alignment, okay? Same happens with families. You're going down life, and sometimes there are major changes that happen. When that occurs, you need to gather around. You got to circle the wagons, okay? But sometimes as well, you need to go to a professional. You need to go to a counselor. You need to go to Stephen's minister or a pastor. You need to get professional help. And that isn't strange. Professional athletes, when they're in a slump, you know what they do? They go to a counselor, except it's not called a counselor, it's called a coach. They go to a coach who helps them through that change that they're going through. Everybody needs a third perspective. The second storm is this: harmful ideas. Our kids are being bombarded with harmful ideas. By the time a child gets to be 18 years old, they will have viewed 18,000 hours of TV. They will have seen sex betrayals. They will have seen all kinds of perversions. If they play video games, they will have seen tens of thousands of murders. In our culture, they will follow celebrities that they should have no business of following. So listen to me. We do a great job of providing for our kids. But we need to do as equally a good job of protecting them. We will do anything to make sure that we offer them clean, organic food, but we allow their minds to feed on junk. We gotta be strong, and we gotta fight for our families. The third storm is rejection, and we all experience it. This isn't just for our kids, and especially when they get into middle school and high school, when it's really a peer type thing. This is for mom and dad as well. for grandma and grandpas. I didn't get time, but will you write down Psalms 71, verse 9? The psalmist said this, and now in my old age, I threw this in for my kids, and now in my old age, don't set me aside. Don't abandon me when my strength is failing. You see, for many of you, you're going down that road now, aren't you? When you were young, your parents took care of you. But now that your parents are getting older, you are taking care of them. We're getting ready to do that for my mom. My mom's going to probably be down here in about a year. You know what that's called when that happens? That's called family. Families are playful. They encourage growth, but they also protect each other. The fourth aspect of a strong family, not an average family, but a strong family, is this: they serve God and others. And the symbol is a globe. You see, an average family just thinks of themselves. Folks, it doesn't take any effort whatsoever just to kind of live within your own family, within your walls. It's totally another thing to live outside your walls. Today, I am the man that I am because of my mom and my dad. I will never forget, in elementary school and in middle school, kind of early high school, my mom took me down to the slums of Kansas City, and we went to see this one lady, Miss Ducey. She'd been a widow for 30 years. The home she had in, there were holes through her walls. It stunk to high heaven because it was filled with cats. And yet my mom would take us down there about once a month, maybe even more often than that, and we would just sit and we'd visit. We'd bring clothes. We'd bring food. We'd bring Christmas, all that kind of stuff. I mean, on top of that, my dad adopted families. I'll never forget this one family. It was the Wise family. Roy Wise, poor as a church mouse, lived out in the country, had no education, okay, only through elementary. My dad helped him get his GED so he could then get a job at the Ford manufacturing plant in the Kansas City area. This was the attitude that I grew up in, that others were more important than myself. Take a look at this verse, Hebrews 10:24. Let us think about each other and help each other to show love and do good deeds. This is what strong families do. So let's invite up my two boys, okay? I have three, but one works nights, Aaron, okay, so he's not here. But this is Matthew and David. Matthew is my middle boy. He's right here. He's a hunk of burning love, looks like his mom. That's what everyone says. And then that's David, the son of Cheryl, okay? So everyone knows him. And these are my kids, and we're just going to hang it out, okay, for you guys to kind of understand our family, the pluses and the minuses, and please be merciful, okay?
We'll see.
Okay.
So happy to be here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for being a part of this today. I want to start off with just a pretty easy question. Tell us about a time whether it was intentional or unintentional or accidental, when they created a really good memory for you guys as a family.
I cannot think of anything. Yeah.
That's normal, though.
Yeah.
So would you,
We had great closets growing up that we were put into, so.
At least we changed out the clothes occasionally.
Yeah,
you know.
It's great. No, we had fun. So what I loved about our family was, to be honest, guys, like what you see from Dad up here is like what you get at home. And there's not, one person on stage, one person back home. Mom and Dad were who they were on stage or at home. And that's what made, I think, life fun. And so we'd have times, we called it B&O, right? Boys' night out. And Dad take all the brothers out, and we'd just go and eat junk food and watch a movie. I remember one day we'd go to the, poor Dad, we went to the Dollar Theater and saw 3 movies at the Dollar Theater, right?
All in a row.
Yeah, we loved, growing up, we loved the Oakland A's, like the Mark McGuire, Jose Canseco A's. I remember my mom spoiled us with Twinkies, and we just sat and watched the World Series. And so just I don't know, we just had a lot of fun. The pastors at the church would come over. You guys know Steve Chalk and Pastor Keung. When they were single and desperate, they would come over to our house. And,
that is so true.
But we just played board games and Scrabble or Sorry and just had a blast. Just had a blast growing up. So, what about you, Matt?
I remember when I guess a couple of friends came over, and Dad went out and got a couple cans of shaving cream, and we had a shaving cream fight in the front yard and made a terrible mess, but that was a lot of fun. And we'd go to Colorado sometimes, and we'd go whitewater rafting a lot. And on one of these trips, my mom came along, and in the middle of the best rapid, she gets thrown out of the boat, takes out the guy behind her. Yeah, so, and then through all the commotion, I pull Mom back in, and
there was hesitation, though.
Yeah,
I don't know if I should pull you
it
back
was.
in.
We were there. Pull her in.
we had a moment. I was looking in her eyes. I was like, all right, my birthday's coming up. You know that, right? But since then, I don't think she's gone whitewater rafting.
That would make sense.
Can I I want to inject something, Jason. Okay. We were always playing tricks on Mom, okay? I did when kids weren't there. She'd go to bed and I'd be hiding, and then she'd be falling asleep and I'd raise up, hello, and it'd scare the living daylights out of her. But one time we were at this park and there were fun rides, and she's asking, now, I've been forgiven of this lie, but George, is this a roller coaster? I never answered her, and kept her away from those signs. When we get to the front of the line, this is a roller coaster. You gotta go, look at all these people behind us. So it was always a blast with Mom.
For you.
It was.
Poor Mom.
Poor Mom.
Well, with that in mind, okay, what about a time when they thought something was going to be fun, but it wasn't fun or a good memory?
Oftentimes now, Dad will walk the malls going over his sermons, and when we were kids, sometimes he'd take us along with him. This is back before Stonebriar Mall even existed. We'd go to Collin Creek Mall, back when it actually had a creek running through it, if anybody remembers that. Anyways, so he'd bring us along. It's like, all right, we're going to the mall. No, it's not fun. There's only one toy store in the mall, and we'd be there for hours.
What was he doing during this time?
Just walking the mall, talking to himself.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously.
Sounds fun. Boys.
Like, there's only so many times you can walk through Foley's, right? And J.C. Penney's as a kid. Wow, that's so great.
Oh, look at this sweater. Oh.
Yeah. Catalogs.
Other times.
Oh, things that weren't fun. Oh, Dad would be like, oh, hey, listen to my sermon. That wasn't fun.
Oh, that is cruel.
You guys can relate. We're all here together. So. No, let's see. I remember we went to Disney World, right? And you think Disney World would be this, epic, awesome family trip, but both Matt and I, all we remember is just walking.
So much walking.
Walking around, and it just felt kind of like a museum. And I remember I was so frustrated with my family, I just walked ahead of them, and I was just muttering all the curse words I learned from him, right, to myself. It's so stupid, why are we here, right? And yeah, it was just one of those trips where I don't know, it just didn't seem fun. The most fun thing we did was just go to the beach and put our toes in the sand, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's so strange. So I have to ask, because this was my in-laws, I didn't really do Disney World that much, but from what I understand, there's a special way to go to Disney World so that you get it all in. And you have to go to certain rides first. And was that the deal? Was that you were going to hurry up and walk everywhere and do everything? Was that what happened, you think? Or
no, our family trips are just whatever he wants to do.
Hey, I'm paying for it, okay?
Dad would come to us and be like, the world doesn't revolve around you. Oh, who does it revolve around then? Okay.
Well, with
Let's
that,
go on to the next
this
subject.
is a good segue, actually. So how about a time that your parents intentionally or accidentally helped you take a step of growth?
My turn. Okay, yes. Okay. Okay, so summer of 8th grade, after 8th grade, I went on my first mission trip. And me and Matt just went. Mom and Dad didn't go with us for whatever reason, but...
I was enjoying my wife.
Yeah. That's weird.
Thanks for that, Dad. Beautiful memory now scarred.
Parents, take your kids on mission trips. Yeah, no, we went on a mission trip, and it's interesting. We went to New Orleans with our students this last spring break, and there was a few parents who were like, "Oh, we don't want to send our kid because it's not safe." And our parents just were never like that. I think maybe they wanted us to die or something. I'm not sure, but
Exchange, yeah.
no, they want. What I loved about growing up is they encouraged that. They wanted us to go on a trip that was outside our comfort zone. They want us to go on a trip where we serve God, where we're with our church family. Like, we never went summer camp growing up. Like, we went on mission trips, and we loved it. We looked forward to it. Dad and I went to Russia twice, and those trips just changed my life, changed like how I view everything. I remember going to a juvenile prison with my dad and meeting kids just like my age who were in prison for simply just stealing food because they were hungry. And it just broke me. And I remember, telling Dad that night, I was like, man, I want to be a missionary. Like, I want to go into ministry. And it would have been really lonely, I think, if my dad wasn't on that trip, like having that experience and coming home and not having to relate with that. And I remember getting off that plane and just hugging my mom and bawling, and she got it, right? And so there was that value of like, hey, we want you to go. We want you to serve. We want you to experience things and experience the joy of serving the Lord. So I really appreciated that.
I remember as a kid, my parents would pay us for doing our quiet times. Yeah.
This is such a bad practice.
Yeah, well, we pay him to do other things. Why not that,
Read your Bible, money will just come down.
It's amazing. But, so we would read a chapter or two and write down in our journal a verse and what it meant to us, right? And then at the end of the week, they give us some money. And we're like, oh, this is great.
Easy money.
Yeah, it's so easy, but I was being tricked. Little did I know. Little nuggets of wisdom, slowly imparting themselves onto me. So,
but the deal was, if he shared our devotion in a sermon, we got $2. Look at me, I got to preach, up here eventually. So I guess he liked my devotion.
$3?
Yeah, $3. Yeah.
What about a time that they led you to do something that they thought was supposed to really help you grow, but it just didn't?
I remember it was maybe 9th, 10th grade, something like that. They paid somebody to come in and give me an aptitude test, try to help me figure out what I wanted to do with my life, what I wanted to be, what career, whatnot. And I think I scored highest on accounting or social work or something like that, but yeah, I don't do either of those. And I scored pretty much, perfectly average on the rest. So that is just kind of just like a test, It's like, here, it's going to be fun. Take this long
Unhelpful.
3-hour test.
Yeah.
Remember, I'm your boss.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, you did everything perfect. So. I'll be honest. So I think I'm embarrassed to say this, but I actually only mowed our lawn once growing up. I remember mowing it once, and then Dad just looking over in like disgust, like, butthead, just give me the lawnmower, right? And so, yeah, and we kind of like to say it's because Dad's, a little bit of a control freak, so to speak. So he likes to do things his way, and which was great growing up. I mean, I didn't have to do hardly anything, right? But what I noticed was, like, my wife and I, we bought a house about a year ago. We have a big corner lot. And here I am mowing a lawn for the second time in my life. I'm like, what am I doing? And pulling out a weed whacker, and I'm just like tearing up my legs, right? And so, I look back on those times, and I kind of wish, Dad would have loosened up a little bit, given us opportunities to teach us and let us fail, and maybe have uneven grass every once in a while, so to speak.
So a follow-up to that, and it relates to it, is, there are some parents that step in quickly anytime their kids begin to struggle. Is there a time that you feel like that they should have let you deal with something on your own as opposed to stepping in?
Yeah, definitely with me. I remember 7th grade geometry class. I did pretty well in all the other maths and sciences, but for some reason, squares and rectangles were difficult. We had maybe not a saying, but it's okay to try and fail, but you give something your best. You do your best. And it's not just saying I've given this my best. You have to prove it. So we came up with different ways to study. We did note cards and things, and I went in early and did tutoring sessions with the teacher and stayed late, and I just really gave it my all, and ended up pulling out a B. So that was definitely.
I can't think of anything like growing up, but I'm like in more like adult life, moving out to California. Dad always has, he's very opinionated, right? And it's so Dad would always be, hey, you need to be doing this, and not this, right? You need to be going to this church and not this church. You need to be learning under this guy and not this guy. And obviously that's parental wisdom and it's good, but I think, again, it was a little bit of that control. So I think looking back on it, there's times I think where with your kid, instead of trying to maybe push your agenda onto them, saying, hey, well, what's God doing in your life? And, try to discern where the Spirit's work is and kind of jump on that. And so, there's probably those times where I was like, hey, just let me learn here. Let me kind of experience this and give me money. All right.
Oh, yeah.
There's the deal. George, you said it earlier, I think one of the greatest gifts that a parent can give a child is resiliency, the ability to bounce back. We all fall at some point, and if we don't learn how to bounce back before the stakes are so high, and as we age, the stakes just get higher and higher to where when we're in our middle ages, when so much rides on us, having learned the ability to bounce back after failure is just vital. And so I think that's great to let your kids, to encourage them to do those things. So how did your parents most effectively communicate their love to you guys?
Presents, money.
Ridicule.
No.
We recently went together to get his will done just to make sure everything's
right.
proper.
I think circling back to play, it's spending time together. Whether it's as kids going out to Rangers games with a cooler full of hot dogs and Capri Sun, which were a lot more difficult to open back then for whatever reason.
Mom wouldn't allow it today, that's for sure.
No. Too many
anyway. Veggie dogs.
High in fiber. Where was I going with this? Just to spend time with each other, whether it's going out to games or we made Christmas ornaments out of Play-Doh. Some of them are still around. Who knows what they put in those things? But just spending time together, little things.
Yeah, I think as I look back on it, and I don't want this to sound like we're the pastor's family, so of course it's like this way. But God was like always number one in our house. And, being in student ministry, you kind of see like, okay, yeah, some of our parents really struggle, like their kid's number one, right? And everything is about the kid. And in our household, like I'm being honest, like God was really number one. And I think felt loved by that because we kind of knew like what our proper place was. And, our whole life growing up was like, hey, we're about advancing God's kingdom, right? And I remember when we were building this building, we were doing the campaign for it in the student center, and we lined up as a family, and we walked down the aisle as a family to put in our kind of tithe check to build this building. And so I love that value that they kind of put into us. They loved us by showing us that, hey, God is God, right? We're not, our parents aren't, these things aren't, God is God. And then obviously, our parents, I think, just did a great job of loving us for who each of us were. So Mom and Dad would take Aaron to the rodeo because he was the cowboy of the family. Dad and I would go to baseball games together, spend the night in Arlington. I don't know. I felt like you got the shaft.
I'm the middle child.
Middle boy.
All right, Aaron got the rodeo, David got baseball. All right, that's it. We're done.
Yeah. Our mom, I share this first service. I feel like I have to share it to be fair. This little TMI, okay? This is a safe space. We would call our mom the orifice queen.
Yes.
Because she would literally check every hole and crevice in our bodies.
Yes.
Right?
Sorry, Mom, wherever you are.
to make sure that we were clean. And she'd just get this weird enjoyment out of it, I think. But, we always found it kind of annoying growing up. But I think now we really, at least our wives are thankful. So... Melissa's back. Yeah, really thankful. So our parents they just loved us for who we were, and we were all really different, and yet they just kind of embraced those differences. And so one last story. I remember I was a senior in high school, playing basketball. I was on varsity because you can't put seniors on JV, and I wasn't good at all, but Dad just made this commitment just to say, I'm going to be at every game. And he was. And some games were like in Callisburg near Oklahoma and Argyle over in Denton. But he was at I don't think he missed one game. And so and Dad would do that for Matt. He would do it for Aaron. And so, I think we just grew up always knowing, even though Mom and Dad were busy with ministry, we always felt, that we knew that we mattered to them. And we knew that we were valued by them. And that was huge for us.
Well, guys, thank you for the time. We're going to hand it back to George.
Let's give it up for my kids. That's great. There is no such thing as a perfect parent, okay? Moi. There's no such thing as perfect kids or a perfect family. I am thankful for God's grace. But you know what? We don't have to be average. We can be strong. And God has given us principles in His Word that if we would just dig in, if we'd go out and get involved and start growing, our families could be mountains and deserts that God could use to draw people to Himself. That's the challenge. Let's fight for Him. Let's pray. Lord, just thank you for your goodness towards our life, that you are our Heavenly Father and you loved us so much that you sent your Son, Jesus Christ, to come into the world that we might know you better, that we might love you and respond to your love that you've expressed to us. God, I thank you for that. Help us. Help us to be those who fight for our marriages, that we really understand the purposes of it, God. Help us to fight for our families, God, to be those who are growing and in your word and yet enjoying life, protecting not just our bodies, but our minds. God, help us to be families that live beyond our walls. God, we want to be different. And so, God, work in us. I give you this, Lord. Thank you for this time. Continue to speak to us as we continue to talk about fighting for relationships next week. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.